Good morning and welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. My name's Diane Alcorn and I am the Membership and Engagement Coordinator here. If this is your first time visiting with us, welcome. We're glad you took the time to join us here. If you'd like more information about our church and our worship community, please feel free and send me an email. In the meantime, again, welcome. We're so glad you took the time to join us.
And welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a gathering of hearts and minds who believe that there exists a better, more transcendent truth and perspective beyond the superficial and unjust values of the world. We are moved by whatever spirit of equity or justice, love, or for some, a deity that calls us forward. As Unitarian Universalist human beings, we are melded together by our common belief in our 7 principles, which rather than a creed as commonly thought of, are the bond that bring us together in our faith, that bring us together in common cause. I'm Melinda McGuckin, Worship Associate and Seminarian at Meadville Lombard Theological School. Joining me today are David Blazer, Music Director, Megan Ross, Director of Religious Education and Engagement, Elizabeth Gerenser, Worship Associate, and our awesome tech team making this live stream possible. I know I'm impressed. A very special welcome to our guest speaker this morning, Reverend Dr. Randy Partain. Randy is a fellowshipped minister with the Unitarian Universalist Association, serving Tapestry Unitarian Universalist Church in Houston, Texas. His primary focus during this pandemic year has been deepening community connection through nurturing spiritual development and vibrant small group ministry. He passionately defines ministry as inviting people into a deeper connection with themselves, deeper connection with others, and deeper awareness of the world we all share. A warm West Shore welcome to you, Dr. Reverend Partain. Together, we are pleased to invite you into this space, which is connecting people in Cleveland and beyond to our welcoming community. Often the world is not so welcoming. Often the values of the world are neither loving nor just. So may this worship hour be one where our souls are fed by a wisdom and a passion that remind us that life doesn't have to be that way, that there exists a larger love in every human heart urging us on to what is better. Let this larger love move in our midst today, and let us be changed by it. And a very special welcome to you if you are a newcomer to our community. No matter what you look like, no matter who you love, no matter where you originated or where you are in terms of finances, if you have a family or are child-free, you are welcome. We welcome everyone who is curious, who wants to seek the truth, and perhaps is looking for a connection to a community of fellow seekers and doers. Here could be your opportunity, here with us at West Shore. We look forward to learning, growing, contributing, and raising awareness together with you. Our principles are an open book. Check out uua.org to learn more about the principles we adhere to. We here at West Shore have an awesome membership and engagement coordinator, Diane Alcorn. She would love to speak with you personally. Her information is being added to our chat right now. Every week we light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It is a beautiful reminder that no matter how many jarring events might happen in the course of the week, the gathered community that is West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church is a source of stability and meaning we can depend on. And now our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio su ley. Este es nuestro magnífico convenio, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
So may it be. And now we turn to our time of greeting. We greet each other in the midst of our joys and struggles, some of which are personal, but others of which are public. And you know, of course, that February is Black History Month. It would be wonderful to learn about Black history as simply American history throughout all 12 months of the year and not just one, but something is better than nothing. So I invite you to consider this video entitled Music That Would Not Exist Without Black People. May we lift up Black experience, Black creativity, and Black joy, not just in this month, but in every month. I also invite you to consider some ways to do this by checking out the NAACP's website and its article, 28 Ways to Celebrate Black History Month. You can check your weekly newsletter for the link.
Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
We often say that giving is an act of faith. It feels good to practice generosity, but we don't always see how far the ripples go when we offer a gift to something greater than ourselves. And yet we do see some of what our generosity yields. The fruit of a congregation thriving in the midst of a pandemic only happens because of your contributions. So I ask you to consider texting a one-time gift to West Shore. Instructions for how to do that can be found on your screen. Thanks for considering a gift this morning. It is only because of your generosity that we can do what we do. And that includes the beautiful music that we're going to hear right now. There are some things I really miss about being able to do Moments for All Ages in person. But there are a couple of cool things about the way that we're doing church nowadays. For instance, you can have a snack in the middle of the service and no one is going to yell at you about taking food into the sanctuary. Like I was going to have an apple this morning and I just wanted a normal apple, but I found these three and I'm not sure which one is normal. Do you ever have this problem, just trying to figure out which apple is normal? I don't know if that's a normal problem, but I found these three. Maybe you can help me out because this one, it's red, but it's a little smaller than the other ones. It's kind of lopsided. I don't know if that's normal for an apple. This one is really yellow. I don't know if that's a normal color for an apple or not. I mean, it's really yellow. And then this one over here, it looks really bruised up. I don't know if it's normal for an apple to look that bruised. So I'm having a really hard time just figuring out which apple is a normal apple. And then I remembered something that somebody told me about apples, something special about every apple. That if you cut one open, and of course, if you're going to cut an apple open at home, we don't play with knives. We want to make sure that an adult is there to help us cut the apple open. But when I cut one of these apples open, any of them, there's a star on the inside. That's what is a normal for an apple. That's what a normal apple has on the inside. Every apple has a star on the inside. And it's the same way with people. It doesn't matter what color someone's skin is. It doesn't matter if somebody looks a little bruised up by life. What matters is what's on the inside. And that's what we mean when we say that every person has inherent worth and dignity, It means that everybody is worthy of love and acceptance. It's not something that you have to earn. It's not something that you can ever have taken from you. It's like you have a star on the inside, and everybody else does too. And that's normal for us to be worthy of love and care and acceptance. So I hope that you will remember that, young people, as you go your way today. In his book, A Wild Sheep Chase, Haruki Murakami wrote, "Mountains, according to the angle of view, the season, the time of day, the beholder's frame of mind, or any one thing, can effectively change their appearance. Thus, it is essential to recognize that we can never know more than one side, one small aspect of a mountain." And now, let us enter into the silence. Some people, especially in Unitarian Universalist churches, pride themselves on being unusual. Some of us go out of our way to not seem normal. You may have heard that normal is just a setting on the washing machine. And yet we still seem to wrestle with understanding other people's perspectives sometimes. We still tend to draw circles that include some and exclude others. We also heard a lot last year about adjusting to a new normal. We were told that we have to adjust to a new normal in the way that we think about the health and well-being of our families and neighborhoods. We had to adjust to a new normal about how we gather together and build community. Some people are still very resistant to this sort of adjustment. Just the practice of wearing masks was met with so much resistance in so many places in our country. People believe that their individual rights are infringed upon because they don't want to wear a mask. It doesn't feel normal. It's interesting that in Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, mask wearing wasn't a tough sell. It was already normal. People were already used to the practice. It was already seen as considerate, culturally acceptable, maybe even culturally reinforced. So wearing a mask in and of itself isn't normal or abnormal. It's just a function of our experience, what we're used to. We think that when we call something normal, we're talking in the abstract. We think we can talk objectively about normal human behavior, normal human relationships, normal practices or beliefs. But what we call normal is almost always a function of what we're personally used to, what we've experienced in our own lives, as limited as that scope may be. So before we get used to a new normal, we may need to gain a new understanding of what normal really means. Who decides what normal even is? And it's an important question, not just because we might see a mountain differently than someone looking at it from another angle or on a different day or in a different season. If we want to welcome people into our communities of faith and encourage them to grow spiritually, we first have to let them know that where they are in this moment is acceptable, normal. I remember reading surveys collected after a workshop that I co-led. It had some typical demographic questions to ensure we were presenting the material in a way that spoke to a broad range of people. And one individual responded to a question about racial or ethnic identity by self-identifying as normal human pinkish, which I think indicates some shame or embarrassment about being white and having privilege, but I'm not sure. Whatever their skin tone happened to be, they thought of it as normal. Of course, that means that people who don't have pinkish skin are not normal. That is problematic. Whether it's about the shade of our skin, our gender identity, our political ideologies, our theologies, or anything else, our commitment to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person means that we might need to develop deeper awareness about how we draw a circle around ourselves and say, I'm normal. The way I think and feel and believe is normal, and everyone else is, well, not normal. That can cause a lot of harm. We might inadvertently contribute to marginalizing someone by our words or actions based on nothing more than our narrow definition of what's normal. Those little injuries are the opposite of fostering justice, equity, and compassion. I was on a social media site recently and I saw a post from a father who wrote, "The teenager I have always thought of as my son came out to me as transgender today. I'm so proud of her for being so brave, and I can't wait to take her shopping for clothes that let her be herself." Heartwarming, right? And yet so many responses to this post were filled with animosity. There were a lot of affirming responses. But one reply said, "Why can't you keep your family's disgusting behavior private instead of forcing the rest of us to be exposed to it?" One read, "Way to go, Dad. Being proud of your degenerate child is a special kind of depravity." Another said, "Pretending it's okay doesn't make it normal." It's easy to feel angry at those strangers, and yet we all have a tendency to make the same mistake in one way or another. We assume that our experience is more or less the same as everyone else's. We have a hard time understanding how another human being could believe or feel something radically different from us. And if they do, they seem abnormal, worthy of judgment or ridicule or hostility. It may not occur to us that for a transgender girl in transition, wearing feminine clothing is normal. It isn't aberrant, it isn't disgusting, it's normal. For a young Black man to be afraid of the police may not seem normal to some people. You may think that anyone who's afraid of the police must have something to hide. They must be a criminal. And yet it's very normal in many Black communities to distrust the police. And there are understandable reasons for that. We grow up in communities, and those communities define our first understanding of what normal is. If a person grows up in a Black community, how they see police is defined by generations of cultural experience. It's normalized by the experiences of a lot of other people in that community. And if a person grows up in a predominantly white community, normal relations with police might look very different. We have a hard time understanding the experiences of others when everyone around us when we were growing up seemed to have similar expectations. And we get taught a lot of things growing up. Our definition of normal is molded by the lessons of our upbringing. Like, big boys don't cry. Big girls don't cry either, for that matter. Just don't cry. Crying is bad. It isn't acceptable to cry in front of other people unless something's wrong with you. And then you should apologize for crying. That's what normal people do. It might take some hard work to sort through all of the lessons we were taught growing up. What have we accepted as normal just because it's what we saw around us, just because we didn't see anyone doing something different? Or what have we felt shame about or some resentment about because what we experience is in conflict with those messages about what normal means? We see other people seeming to enjoy their lives in their typical nuclear families with their typical careers and relationships, and we think, why can't I have that? Why can't I be normal? Why can't my family be normal? Maybe it's in communities of trust that we learn to accept the nuances of our experience and start to heal some of the wounds of our past rather than hiding them. Once we see that everyone has wounds that need healing, we can start honestly sharing our legitimate needs if we're in a community of people who make it normal to vulnerably share what we need. Or maybe we step up to meet needs more confidently when we're in a community that makes it normal to engage our passions in a meaningful way. If we want to engage in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, our congregations need to be places where folks know that whatever they're going through, wherever they are in that personal search, they are acceptable. In so many churches, the normal behavior is for folks to take up a line in the membership book, donate their pledge, and sit back and wait to be ministered to. Don't get me wrong. We all need to be cared for. We all need to be ministered to. It's important for us to create space for that. It's also important for us to recognize that this community isn't just for us. We can take responsibility for building beloved community together with a common vision. We can nurture one another through what we create together. That's how we discover meaningful spiritual community, by actively engaging in the work of building it. And that work nurtures us spiritually too. And it isn't always a bad thing to be unusual. I've gotten attention before because a group of people learn that I'm a composer and a pianist, and they want to know all about that. That's fascinating to them. They don't feel like creative people, so my skill set is unusual. It isn't normal. I become the focus of their attention. That can be nice, but there's more to me than that. If that's all anyone wants to see about me, it can start to feel like I'm not being seen completely. I'm a novelty. I've seen some liberal groups treat people from marginalized communities in a similar way. Their identity is outside the norm for the group, so they become a point of fascination and oddity. They aren't welcomed as full human beings because everyone is so focused on the one quality that makes them intriguing, their skin color or their gender identity or sexuality or whatever. That can feel a little icky. Strange to say it, but being valued for being outside the norm can be as problematic as being excluded for being outside the norm. Drawing the circle wider means inviting complete, whole human beings into deeper relationship, allowing all of who someone is to be normal, acceptable, celebrated, even those aspects of who they are that are very different from our personal experience. I recently watched a documentary about transgender representations in movies and television, and I was struck by an offhanded comment made by one of the people interviewed. He said, "At the time, I was in and out of shelters, couch surfing, the typical Black trans experience in New York City." The normal experience of a transgender person of color in New York City when this person was growing up was to be in and out of shelters and couch surfing. Does that seem normal to you? Or do you have to draw the circle of normal wider in order to include this individual's experience in your understanding of human reality? Now, I don't mean to say that any experience should be normal. We're not talking about a vision for the world right now. We're talking about the real lived experience of human beings. Some people experience something very different than what we might wish for them, but that's their experience. In many cases, that's what is normal to them, or it has become normal for them. There are some things we don't want to normalize. We don't want injustice to become normal. It has in many ways. And we've also seen that we can engage in the democratic process to begin changing that, to actively create a new normal for our society. We want to put our financial and physical resources toward effecting change so that what some people experience as normal can be improved. We don't want it to be normal that people don't have clean water to drink. We don't want it to be normal that people live in toxic environments because they can't afford to live elsewhere. We don't want it to be normal that people are afraid of police. We don't want a lot of things to be normal, but we have to accept that these experiences are normal for some people before we can really understand the need for change. Some people have a lot easier time seeing their experience validated by the world around them. Cisgender straight white people see what they think of as normal experience represented on television and in movies all the time. But for people in marginalized communities, it has historically been much more of a challenge to see your experience validated in mainstream media. How were Black men represented in the media you saw when you were growing up? Because that may have influenced what you subconsciously decided was normal for Black culture in reality. How do you see lesbians represented in media? How do you see Muslim people represented? How do you see transgender people represented? A lot of people live in silos. We have friends who look more or less like us. We have friends with the same general financial resources as us, the same educational background as us, similar political ideologies. And so that becomes our definition of normal. And for people outside that definition of normal, we often rely on problematic portrayals in media and assume what we're seeing is an accurate representation of people who aren't normal, not our kind of normal. As Edwin Markham's poem relates, he drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. We don't need to feel shame about how we draw our circle of normal, but maybe we can be more aware of how we define normal. Maybe intentionally drawing the circle wider, drawing our definition of normal wider, can help us be more welcoming toward the people that we really want to build thriving, beloved community with. Maybe it can even help us be more deeply connected with one another. Because we might judge the people we see right in front of us in this community a little harshly sometimes if they do something that falls outside our definition of normal. If someone says, I want to share an idea and I'd like to finish my thought without anyone interrupting me. We may not be used to that. We may think, that's weird. Who says that? What's wrong with them? We might try to pick apart why this person would state that odd boundary. Maybe we start telling stories in our heads about why someone would behave so abnormally. And for that person, maybe this behavior is normal. Maybe they've been frustrated by a lot of people's dismissive behavior in the past, and they've learned how to allow this intentional statement of expectation to set a healthy framework for respectful communication. Maybe it doesn't feel normal yet because it's new. But we don't have to know any of that in order to draw our definition of normal a little wider. We can be curious. We can care about how other people are doing without deciding that their behavior isn't acceptable. Because normal is this arbitrary thing. It's partly the messages we get from the world around us. This way of being is normal, and anything outside of that is dangerous or worthy of ridicule. And it's partly just our experience. What we've experienced seems normal to us. That's our point of reference for how life is supposed to be. But if we want to build authentic, meaningful community that embraces multiculturalism and seeks to genuinely welcome people who have been rejected, misrepresented, and marginalized, we need a definition of normal that includes them. Because what we say when we define normal more broadly is that a person makes sense. If you're not normal, if I can't make room in my circle for your experience or behavior or identity, then I'm essentially saying that you don't make sense to me. You don't belong. You aren't welcome. When I can look at you and say, I haven't experienced what you've experienced. I don't have the same identity that you have, but I'm willing for your life to make sense to me. I'm willing to learn who you are rather than tell you who you ought to be. Now I'm communicating that you matter, you're worthy, you are welcome. And it begins with my willingness to listen. Welcoming other people's experiences, beliefs, or identities doesn't require us to change our own. We're still in the circle when we draw the circle wider. Drawing the circle wider doesn't require us to change what we've experienced or who we are. We still get to be completely ourselves. We just allow space for other people to be connected with us without feeling like they don't belong. I get to be me, and you get to be you, and all of us are normal. When we can create this depth of connection, this radical inclusion, we start to see the power of a resilient community of people who have different ways of seeing the world. We start to see the way growth happens when people feel safe being vulnerable because they don't have to pretend to be a certain way just to have a place of belonging. We start to see how adapting to change outside of ourselves becomes easier because we have a community of trusted travelers on the journey with us. So may we listen and read other people's perspectives with that vision in mind. May we bear witness mindfully to other people's stories, not judging their experiences or identities as normal or abnormal, but just allowing people to be who they are and drawing our circle of understanding to encompass their life, their experience, their normal. And may we draw the circle wider together and wider still, and eventually learn that we don't need to draw a circle to acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the legitimacy of every person's experience and identity. Maybe we can just say, may love be our new normal. So we take a moment for reflection, and you may want to close your eyes if you like. I just invite you to ask, who is it for you? Who are you drawing a circle and shutting out? Maybe it's not a specific individual. Maybe it's a group of people. Maybe a group of people you don't even know personally. But who is it for you? And what would it take for you to draw a circle that includes them? What would it take for you to recognize their experience, their identity as normal, valid, human? How can we be even better at welcoming and celebrating others as complete, whole human beings? If you're willing, you can begin that work this week, today if you want. You can begin that work of drawing your circle of normal wider. May you be so bold. Amen, and blessed be.
Make channels for the streams of love, where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them every one. But if at any time we cease such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For me must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the love, love.
And now bring your chalice close to extinguish it, as I extinguish the chalice here. We extinguish our flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. Just a quick reminder, we have coffee hour coming up at 11:30, followed by the sermon chat at 12:30. Look forward to seeing you there.
May you go forth with eyes of compassion and ears of understanding, nurturing greater wholeness in the world around you by intentionally drawing your circle of acceptance wider. Go with peace and courage.